I mean, that's what we're talking
That's
about.
what it is.
F1 will go racing in Spain for the next 10 years, but
But
where will they go racing?
where? Where in Spain? We don't know. That's enough of an intro.
I had an epiphany. Do you remember when um, Albert Ferreira, I believe is how you say his last name, tweeted the thing that caused F1 to melt down? And he's like, I heard this rumor and I hope it's not true. And then the entire F1 Twitterverse just melted down and was like, oh my gosh, what is he talking about? Is a driver losing a seat? And he basically had to come out and apologize for causing a frenzy. And everyone kind of chalked it up to like maybe he was just trying to increase engagement or something silly. What if it was this news that the Spanish GP is moving from Barcelona to Madrid?
100. I'm convinced. Like before you even asked the question, as soon as you were like, "Remember the tweet?" This, yeah, because everything else has been so boring and quiet. What else could it have been that would have caused like Spanish journalists to just like really get crazy upset if it has, or just, bummed out if it has nothing to do with Carlos and or Fernando?
It's the most relevant rumor slash news to come out that made me think, oh, I wonder if this was the tweet.
Yeah, I'm convinced. I Unless something else comes out, that has to be. It just lines too much of. I hope not, because people care so much. There's a lot of people that love Barcelona, and everything. And it's, I mean, it's history, and it's, but you know,
Do people love Barcelona or do they dislike change?
yes,
Because
they think they like Barcelona and they hate change.
I mean, because I think we all watched the Barcelona GP together, at least in this generation of cars. It hasn't been a great race in any way, shape, or form. Like, it is way. It doesn't create great racing with modern day cars. So I feel like I'm living a little bit in the twilight zone where we all collectively dislike the Barcelona track every year, and then but now everyone loves it. Now we can't possibly lose it this race.
How dare you? No. Oh no. Like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Well, English and words are so difficult. It did seem like everyone was a lot more emotional about it than I would have anticipated hearing this news prior. I think also lots of people tend, at least from my viewpoint, when another street circuit is added, I feel like a lot of people get like really up in arms about it, because a lot of people are anti street circuit because they think it's like not as good of racing, and blah, 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 blah. I'm like tired of that narrative and over it. Um, so I think that was just a really easy thing to jump on, being like, no, we need to keep Barcelona for all of these reasons because Madrid would have all of these things that we just don't like, you know.
So the rumor coming from a pretty credited F1 journalist is that there's going to be a Madrid street race starting in 2026 and it's signing a 10-year contract. The last I read, the Barcelona contract is through 2026. So if all of this is true and F1 isn't pulling out of the last year of that Barcelona contract, we're going to have two Spanish races in 2026. But then it might Barcelona. Let's just say the rumor has nothing to do with Barcelona leaving the calendar. Everyone has just jumped to that conclusion. The concrete reporting is that the Madrid street race will start in 2026 and be on the calendar for 10 years, along with reporting about where the track will be, which I am not an expert on the geography of Madrid, so go look that up online. I'm not going to attempt to explain it to anyone on this podcast. So I think I completely agree with you. I think the whole street races are inherently bad is not a narrative I personally sign on to. I think that street races do a couple of things. I do think there's a different skill to driving them. I think they are a different type of spectacle to watch on TV. And the third one that I don't think we talk about enough is that if we want to talk about making F1 accessible to more people, particularly not incredibly wealthy people, having a street race, particularly just in the center of major cities like Madrid, is a really key way to make it more accessible. Because even if someone who can't afford to attend the race, they can still be involved in the commotion of it. They could go to a fan zone or a fan event that a team might put on in the center of the city. It becomes more accessible in other ways to people who can't drive for hours outside of Barcelona to go to this static track. And I feel like I'm always pushed on the side to defend street races more than I probably believe, because people are just so adamantly against them. So I'm like, no, they're okay and they serve a purpose. And I think the accessibility point of them is a really big positive point that we don't talk about enough.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like think just because it's a street circuit and where it is, like being in a city, they don't think of that being like increasing access, which is like weird and wild. But when you do remove all of that separation, like you just increase the direct exposure because it's literally like right outside. It's there. You can't like escape it. I mean, yeah.
Right. And this doesn't apply to Vegas, and this obviously doesn't apply to Monaco. But um, apparently Singapore, it's like right in the center of everything that's going on. You know, Miami's in the middle of nowhere. It's
Yeah.
not really a street
Miami's
track, but
actually the opposite.
yeah,
Yeah. Like
yeah. Not all street tracks are created equal, but something like I looked at the plans for this. This Madrid track would be right in the center of the city, and I think that's a real big positive to this. I will also point out that I have not been to the Barcelona track, but apparently it is a nightmare to attend that Grand Prix. Apparently the facilities are old and outdated. It's impossible to get there and then get out. It doesn't have the best record for being safe. And it seems like the promoter has been resistant to commit to upgrading any of these on track experiences. And F1 has really emphasized in recent years that it wants to be able to charge a high price to attend a Grand Prix, and it wants the experience on track to match that price that they're charging for it. So if Barcelona, the promoter, is unwilling to commit to making its experience not an absolute nightmare, I don't care how historic the track is. It doesn't make sense to have an outdated facility on the calendar, and that's not F1's fault.
right. Yeah, just because something's historic doesn't mean it's still good and giving you the same type of product. I remember seeing plenty of short form content of, trying to get to the Barcelona GP and struggling of timing and, transportation and many of other things that, you need to rely on to be able to get to an F1 race. So being, connected to a major city, and that's something that you also can also be relying on, of having all of that like transportation stuff. So it will be interesting to see how it unfolds. If we'll end up, you know, having 1, 2 Spanish races, if it comes down to it, it would be really interesting to see if they'd keep both or if it would be bye Barcelona. But like you said, that's not necessary. No one is saying that. The reports are talking about
Right.
adding Madrid.
Yeah. And a lot of people are saying the math isn't mathing. Um, and something I will point out that the Concord Agreement, which by the way is the agreement between the teams F1 and the FIA on how they're going to run the sport, currently only runs through 2025. And with this Concord Agreement, there is a max number of races of 24, which means this upcoming year and 2025, there can only be 24 races. They will sit down in probably 2025, a little later than we would probably assume, to renegotiate the Concord Agreement. And I am sure there's already been discussions between teams and F1 and the FIA about what they want to increase that number to. Because I know that number is not going to come down. It's a matter of how much that will increase to. So I think part of it is the math isn't mathing, because there'll probably be 26, 27 plus races starting in 2026, which I still think is way too many, but I'm talking through the logistical reality of what's going to happen. or what seems to be on trend to happen. Also, Stefano Domenicali, who's the president of F1, has been very clear that he's looking towards some kind of rotating schedule for some races. So if you're hearing a lot of like, oh, well, they signed a 10-year deal, technically we don't know the intricacies of that. It might be a 10-year deal, but it's going to rotate with a couple of other tracks in that region for 15 years, and they're going to get 10 of the 15. Like, I think there's a lot of schedule maneuvering, and it's going to look different come 2026 when this new Concord agreement is put into place.
I agree with you. I think we're not decreasing the calendar anytime soon. I also think we're already at the point of too many races. But everyone else is like money, and so there'll be more. It will be very interesting to see when conversations. I also think 2025 for Concord Agreement updates, how this will be addressed, and that's probably when we'll be getting to get more and more information about it. But yeah, probably not the last of speculated new race reports that we'll be getting. I don't think Madrid will be the last one.
Hey, positive spin on more races. So I think collectively we all feel like Grand Prix prices have gone up way too much. It's really hard for someone to be able to afford to go to a race weekend. If they increase the race number by enough, technically by the rules of supply and demand, maybe with more supply, eventually prices will have to go down because there'll be less people wanting to go to races because there's so many races to choose from. That's me being hopeful. There's my positive spin.
Thank you for listening to this highlight from episode 46 of Grid Walk. Don't forget to like and subscribe for a ton more F1 videos and other F1 content. You made it this far in this video, so go watch the full episode. There's like a ton more F1 fun right in the rest of that episode, and you can click it right here. Ready? Watch. Move your mouse and click, click, click.